Once again, welcome to the webinar, Building a Career Without Boundaries, Part 2, presented by Kate Williams and PXC International. I'm Christine Vokey, Director of Education and Information at PXC International. And for anyone who's just joined, I want to draw your attention to the question pane. It's in the control panel on the right side of your screen, and you can expand it out. Kate will be taking questions at the end of her presentation, so if you have any question during the talk, just type it into the question pane. It'll show up for me, and I can present it to Kate when she's finished. Kate Williams is joining us tonight. We're so pleased to have her. Part 1 was wonderful, and I think you'll find Part 2 is fabulous as well. Kate is an employment specialist for adaptive technology services in San Francisco, California. She develops and conducts workshops specifically designed for visually impaired and blind job seekers in California, in the Northern California region. In addition, she's a career development specialist for the California Department of Rehabilitation. Kate brings more than 20 years of human resources experience to this role. She was responsible for recruiting for an international pharmaceutical company. She recruited field sales forces, marketing professionals, and PhD scientists. Kate received special commendation for the recruitment and retention of minority employees as well. Kate's true passion is to assist visually impaired and blind individuals to realize their potential and provide them with superior job-seeking techniques, enabling them to acquire employment. And with that, I want to say thank you, Kate, for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you, Chris. To those of you who attended the last webinar, welcome back. And to those of you joining us for the first time, we're so pleased to have you. Life with vision loss can be a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And this is particularly evident with the loss of a job or the inability to perform optimally in a present position, because fear sets in, and the fear is real. Some of the questions you may ask will be, will I ever be capable of working again? Can individuals with vision loss secure employment? Can I keep a job when I'm having difficulty with my vision? The answers to all of these concerns is an absolute and qualified yes, you can. I see it happen every day. I conduct the employment workshops, as Chris mentioned, for blind and visually impaired individuals. Our graduates have accomplished amazing results. It's just been incredible to watch what they have accomplished. And it's particularly gratifying to me because I, too, have experienced some of those same challenges. I'm a PXCer. I have profound vision loss. I cannot drive, read a book, or use a computer without adaptive technology aid. I use a cane for mobility, and but it always hasn't been that way. It actually is something that has been in the last 10 years when I've had to make some adjustments. I was employed, as Chris also mentioned, by a pharmaceutical company, and for many years as a human resources manager. And when I lost my vision, I was distraught because I was not able to commute to my job any longer. I lost the vision in my right eye first, and it precluded me from driving. And I couldn't drive to my job. And so I very carefully considered my options, and with a great deal of deliberation, I moved to Northern California and to from Southern California to Northern California, where I could actually have public transportation. I began my work as an executive recruiter and did quite well for the first several years. I then had a hemorrhage in my left eye, my good eye, and it made it impossible for me to use my computer. And the computer was really an essential component of what I did. So I researched possible options and discovered adaptive technology. Its use enabled me to perform successfully for several additional years, and my company closed last year. As a matter of fact, the company I work with presently is the same company that trained me how to use adaptive technology. I've been very fortunate. Later in today's presentation, I will share with you some of the success stories of individuals who have overcome much more than I and have have really created meaningful employment for themselves. I hope that some of these stories will motivate you, inspire you, and bring you hope. I must say, however, that each of the people I will mention later on have several attributes. They're all commonly held with the people that have achieved success. One of them is certainly tenacity. They all made a choice, a very educated choice to move forward. A lot of them have said, I'm choosing to deal with what I have rather than concentrating on what I don't have, and I love that about them. All of them were highly motivated to work, and all of them put a plan into action. How do we design an effective plan? Slide 3, please. I'm sorry, just one moment. A plan is going to consist of several things. First of all, you have to have a resume. You have to build a resume, and you have to create a cover letter. Both of these tools will be used directed to the direct needs of the employer, not just a one-size-fits-all. It's not going to work. In webinar number 1, we covered some depth, building of a resume and creating a cover letter. And I would suggest, if you are interested in that information, that you go to the PXE website and look at locate the webinar number 1 information. If you need any additional help with that, later on I'll be giving you my email address where you can contact me personally. The next thing that we're going to do, and today we're going to have a little bit of fun because we're getting into the kind of really creative part about creating a job for yourself or keeping the job that you already have. We'll be talking about conducting a search to locate jobs, preparing for the interview, learning the art of interviewing, and it is an art, and keeping the job once you've been given that job offer. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about that hidden job market because I think in today's, we've been conditioned, I think, for a number of years right now to primarily find our work by looking at job boards. It used to be in the newspaper. We used to be able to pick up the newspaper. There were all of the ads that were listed in the classifieds, and we get our pencil and circle the job that we were interested in. Today we have a lot more of a resource, particularly in the use of job boards. But I do not think that you should rely on job boards. A very small percentage of people find their jobs on a job board. It's amazing the number of people that have sent out 300, 400, 500 resumes and haven't had a response back. And it's because most of the employers are inundated with resumes. They don't have time to read all of them. And as mentioned before, unless your resume and cover letter are tailored to their needs, they're probably not going to read your resume more than 10 seconds if indeed they're going to read it at all. So we need to look at other ways. I'm not suggesting that you don't apply to positions on the job board, but don't limit yourself to the jobs that are posted. Today we hear a lot about networking, and I think a lot of people say, oh, it's Facebook, it's all of the things that I'm not going to become involved with. And I can certainly understand that. I think the word networking has really been overdone, but it does have some extremely practical applications. If any of you are in LinkedIn, congratulations. I'd like to tell you a little bit about it and how it works and how you can use it in your job search. If you are not a member already, I'm inviting you to join. You can do that in a couple of ways. You can email me at this address that you're seeing on the screen, and I will send you an invitation. And that invitation, however, you'll be connected with my connections, but I must tell you that most of them are in the California region and may not be of the best advantage for you, but you're welcome to do that. Alternatively, you can go directly to LinkedIn, and you can register on LinkedIn and create a profile. This will allow you to do a number of things. It's going to tell people that you are experience in certain areas. It's a whole profile to fill out, rather easy. You can also post your resume there if you wish. And if any of you have questions or difficulty when you're going to LinkedIn, please be sure to give me a call or send me an email. The reason I'm suggesting LinkedIn is because it is a professional site. It's not used for pictures of the kids or your last vacation. It's strictly used by individuals just like yourself who may not be looking for work but like to stay connected with the outside world of their particular area of expertise. It has been drawn to my attention, and I know this to be true. I've talked to many managers who actually use LinkedIn to find their candidates rather than posting a job or rather than going to where they're advertising it. The reason for that is that managers feel that the people that are in their professional circle know other professionals, and it is a way for them to go directly to individuals who have something in common. So it is a wonderful tool. I would wish that we had the time for me to go into this in depth because there are many tools that will allow you to do a search. The one thing that you're going to have to do if you join LinkedIn directly is to create a database by asking other people to join you. So send it out to your friends. Ask them to join LinkedIn. They don't have to be in your profession or in your area of interest because they also know people, and that's the whole thing about LinkedIn. It builds upon our connections so that if you became my connection, I would have an opportunity to be linked to your connections. I think I have 168 people on my LinkedIn. I could have more, but I'm trying to keep it at a manageable position because indeed I have over 1 million people that I am now linked in with as a result of the 168 that I've directly connected with. It can be a great tool. Another great way to find out about positions is to go directly to the companies you're interested in. So I'm suggesting to all of you that you make a list of the companies that really appeal to you. Go to their website. See what they're all about. Is it everything that you've thought? Are they one of the best places to work? Are they friendly to your kind of lifestyle, and do they produce the product or have the service that is in your area of expertise? And then when you study the site for that kind of information, don't forget to go to their area that says either career or employment opportunities. If you can't find it as a link, sometimes you'll find it under About Us or Contact Us. Not all companies post their positions because it is a very intensive process, keeping the jobs updated, taking them off when they've been filled. But it is a good opportunity for you at least to see the type of positions that they have listed. Next slide, please. Also, contact the Employment Development Department, unemployment as we call it, because they do have a lot of local job resources, maybe not posted on their website, but they're more than happy to help you find some other resources that are in your local area. You're not going to find those jobs posted on job boards necessarily. And then I think it's very important if you're in a profession or if you have a profession that you want to join, it's very important to attend a professional organization and associated meetings. For instance, I can think of one example that I attend from time to time. It's in public relations, and they have meetings that are held every single month. They're lunches. They're quite inexpensive. I think it's $10 for me to attend their lunches, and I'm able to discuss and meet people in the same field. And it's a wonderful place to get to know people. You certainly don't want to pounce on them immediately with, I'm looking for a job and here's my resume. But go there to develop some relationships, meet some people, find out what kind of opportunities are available, and it really will give you some ideas as to where you might be able to look. So check it out. You can do some research to find out if there are organizations or meetings that are being held in your area. And then if you don't have anything, I know this might sound a little far-fetched, but you might want to consider going to Chamber of Commerce mixers, because at Chamber of Commerce mixers, you find a great variety of companies being represented. They like to get their name out there. They like to go there and meet with other people and see what their competition is doing and whatnot. It's a great place to meet new people, again, not pouncing on them with your resume necessarily, but making those connections. And if you've made these connections, whether they be through LinkedIn, through meetings, through chamber meetings, whatever other creative things you can think of, pick up the phone at some time and call them. I can guarantee you they're not going to pick up the phone and call you. So it takes a little bit of assertiveness, but the rewards are really worth it. The other thing that we frequently forget are our friends and family. You know, if you live in Cleveland and you have friends and family that live in New York, perhaps you haven't thought about giving them a call, but I can guarantee you that some of those friends and family in New York may have friends and connections in your local area. So not in a pleading fashion, but don't forget to contact friends and family. Let them know that you're looking for jobs. And if you have any companies of interest and you know that people work in those companies, friends or family, call them up. Ask them if they know of any job openings or if they can introduce you to people within the area. Because most jobs are not posted, as I mentioned before, and most jobs are filled before they have the need to post them. So you want to get in there before everyone else has become your competition. Next slide, please. Don't forget, represent yourself based on the employer's needs. I'm saying this because many times when we put together a resume, when we found a job that we think of as is of interest, we simply send out a resume and sometimes accompany it with a cover letter. It won't work today. You really need to fashion your resume and your cover letter to grab the employer's attention, to convince them that you are the best person for them to hire. Many times, if you do see a job posted online, you're able to see the duties and responsibilities, which is otherwise known as a position description. There are some creative ways that you can find more about the position if you go to other jobs, the same kind of titles that are posted, and look at them so that you can at least have an idea as to how to position the information in your resume. Again, you can refer to the TXC webinar part 1 to find out more information. Next slide, please. When you're applying for employment, there are several ways in which you can do it. If you found the position online, then they're probably going to ask you to apply to the position online. And what I've been seeing more and more recently is sometimes when you actually apply, they send back an application to you before you can even attach your resume and cover letter. They are doing this to weed out people that they feel may not be eligible for the position. They tend to be rather brief. And it's worth the effort because, quite frankly, it creates a database for the company. And so perhaps you may not hear from them for this particular position that you applied to, but when another position becomes available in the same arena, they're going to go to their database and they're going to retrieve resumes, and they usually save those for about 6 months. Another way that you can submit your resume, particularly if you've done some research, have located a company that is of interest, is with a hard copy letter. That almost always should be accompanied by a very much tailored cover letter so that you're getting the attention of the people that are going to be reviewing your resume. There's another way you can apply, and that's in person, which may seem a little bit challenging, but I've seen it work. I've seen people who actually want to work for a company and they've gone to the corporate or regional offices with their resume in hand, walked into the Human Resources Department, but emphasized to the person in the Human Resources Department that they have done a lot of research, really want to work with the company, understand that they may not have any positions that are available right now, but you'd like to leave your resume. You might get a mixed response on this. Sometimes they'll just say, go online and apply. That's the only way we accept positions. It depends upon the company, but it is worth taking a chance, and it's getting you out there, and it's getting you familiar with what it's like to apply for positions. So I do encourage you to at least give it a try. I think what I'm trying to say here is don't give up. Look at all the options that you have. I'm going to also mention to you right now that if you apply to a position, and if you have not heard back from them, I highly encourage you to follow up. It's a little bit of a challenge because a lot of times you're going to feel that you're bothering or you're doing something that's inappropriate, but I can tell you from experience of many of the members that I've had in the workshop that this is how they've obtained a resume, is by following up. There was one young woman in my class who had been in sales and in the construction industry. And there was an ad online, and she actually called and submitted her resume to the headquarters on the East Coast. She didn't hear anything, so she called the East Coast, talked with someone in the Human Resources Department who told her that indeed they had her resume and they were still reviewing and they would get back to her. She didn't hear anything in another week, and so she picked up the phone and called the regional office, the office that was responsible for, that's where she would be working, was in the regional office in the East Bay of the Bay Area. And she asked to speak with the sales manager, who got on the phone, and she explained to him that she had sent in her resume, hadn't heard anything back, and he wanted to see her immediately because he said, that's what a salesperson would do. I love it. And she got the job. So she used a little creativity there. In fact, she was the one who probably garnered more interviews than any other person I've ever worked with, and it was all due to the fact that she followed up. If you've if you've applied online, you can write an email to that same address. You can also pick up the phone. Just make the call. Just do it. It's a little bit challenging, but the rewards will definitely be worth it. Next slide, please. When you're going to follow up, I suggest that you arrange your documents with the company name. And let me start this over again. In order to follow up, I suggest that when you create a file for your resumes, as you apply to the job, save your resume with the name of, in the Save To box, so that you are putting the name of the company and the date that you submitted that resume. Because then when you go back to that file, your resume file in your documents, when you bring up all of those resumes and the names of the company and the date, you'll be able to instantly tell when you sent it, and it will give you an indication as to when it might be appropriate to follow up. And I think the follow-up should take place at any time between 1 and 2 weeks after you've submitted it. It's also a good idea to have it in that fashion, because in that way you'll be, if you win, you are, I'm being hopeful here, when you are granted an interview, you'll be able to retrieve the exact document that you sent to them so that you're taking the right one to, the correct one to the interview itself. You can write an email to individuals, or you can actually pick up the phone and make the call. Next slide, please. In order to prepare for the I want you to, I'm drawing your attention now. I think I got a little mixed up on my slides here. Sorry, just one moment. I'm going to bring up telephone interviews right now rather than including them in the other kinds of interviews, because they're happening more and more frequently. They're doing this because they receive so many resumes that it's difficult for them to keep up with the number of resumes that they have. So they narrow them down to a few people that may qualify, and then it makes sense to pick up the phone, and I'm sorry to say this, but to try to weed out individuals who may not be qualified. So there are a few things that you should do when you're looking for a job, and I think that that is that you make sure that your phone message, your outgoing phone message, is appropriate. There's nothing worse than having someone reach someone where a little child is talking, as cute as it is, but as a little child is on the phone leaving the message. That's not going to make a professional impression, and so make sure that your outgoing message is appropriate. When you're preparing for that, you will probably know they'll indicate either by giving you a phone call and or emailing you that they'd like to conduct this. Not always, but you may have some time to prepare for this. So a couple of things that you need to do. You need to make sure that you are isolated during that interview. Make sure everyone in your family knows, I'm going to be on a phone call. It's very important. I don't want to have any interruptions. And then another thing that you might do is to make sure that you put your resume and the position description side by side so that you're able to point. They'll be using your resume, so you want to be able to have that resume at hand so that you're both looking at the same thing. And then next slide, please. The interview itself, your goal in that interview is to win an in-person meeting. And so you can expect that they're going to ask you very brief, usually very brief, direct, concise types of questions. It's not a time for them to have a long conversation with you. They're simply trying to see, are you qualified for the job? So you need to respond in the same kind of manner. Don't get caught up in a lot of chit-chat because it's not why they're calling you, and unless it's really indicated that that be appropriate, I would stay away from that. Another tip that I have for you is that you should perhaps try standing up, if not all the time, periodically, because the body, the voice sounds better if you're standing up. And in fact, I think I might try that right now. Standing up, you get more voice, you get more of it's just a stance of being more present. And don't forget to smile, because it can be rather intimidating to be on the phone. Try to relax. Try to smile at the appropriate times to yourself. They won't see you, but believe me, it will be felt. And before you hang up, be sure to indicate that you have an interest. A lot of people allow themselves to be interviewed thinking, okay, that's it. If they like me, they do. If they don't, then that's it. But you can't do that today. You have to really indicate that you have an interest. And be sure, if you have an opportunity, to kind of wrap it up with that when you're asking them to meet with you. Let them know that I think I can make a contribution to your company because it's very important, I think, at the end of that conversation, and they will probably give you that time. Next slide. When they call, when the company calls to set up the interview, be sure that you have your calendar next to you also, because you want to make sure that you have the availability. And, you know, there's a lot of diverse opinions about when to disclose your disability, and certainly we can cover this at the end of the presentation if you have any specific questions. But I have done exhaustive research in this area and talked to many people who are recruiters and who work with individuals who have a disability, and to employers, which I think is most important, regarding their take on this and when it is appropriate. Once they've set up, once the company has set up an interview, many people think, and most people think, that it is the best time for you to disclose your disability. If you, on the other hand, if you are a person that has a good deal of your vision and you don't use any adaptive technology, and you don't use a cane, you don't use a guide dog, and you feel that, you know, all of your, it's just a slight issue that you have, you may wish to disclose to them at the first interview in person. But remember that if you are using any adaptive technology or any aids or have difficulty right now in performing your job, likelihood is that could occur in a new job. And if you don't mention it before you see that employer, you've almost already set up a little bit of not maybe distrust, but they will appreciate knowing ahead of time. You could be asked a lot of questions. Well, how do you do your work? And you can certainly talk about adaptive technology briefly at that time. But the whole point is they cannot and will not cancel an interview with you because it's, first of all, illegal, and most companies are very aware of that. They don't want to take a chance that you're going to come back and say they canceled an interview when I disclosed that I couldn't see. And also, I think most companies are aware today with ADA and so much information with the 20th anniversary of ADA being just yesterday, that it is appropriate for them as their due diligence to interview people. We'll cover that a little bit more in depth if you wish to toward the end. Before we start talking about specifics of the interview, I want to give you a couple of good pointers because I can tell you that when you're getting ready to go to that interview and you discover that there's a rip in your pants, or it ruins the whole thing. You need to be prepared. So if you are going to be driving to an interview, plan your trip. And make a dry run if you're not familiar with the location. If you don't know exactly where they are, make a dry run because you don't want to get lost in traffic. You don't want to get lost by taking a wrong turn. So do a dry run. If you take public transportation, if you cannot drive and you're taking public transportation, call ahead of time. Call your transportation agency to map out your trip. Leave a little bit earlier than the schedule does indicate, because there are always things that happen down. Trains break down, buses are caught in traffic, so leave the one time before the schedule. Have some cash on hand, and I suggest that you have $1 bills for transportation emergencies. If something should happen with your car, if something should happen with public transportation, you don't want to be late for that appointment, so take some $1 bills for you. Call a taxi, whatever you have to do to try to get there. Excuse me, just one moment. Next slide, please. Your clothes. They should be clean. They should be no stains. And if you need to launder or send to dry cleaners, do it before. Know what you're going to wear because you need to be professional. And you don't want to be finding out that you don't have the black pants that you thought you had hanging in the closet, that the jacket that you were going to wear has a tear in it. So be sure that you check out your clothes, make sure they're clean. And then I would even suggest that you set out the clothes ahead of time. Maybe put them on a separate hanger, hang them up someplace where they're accessible. And don't forget to, choose the kind of shoes that you're going to wear, the kind of belt, so on and so forth, all of the accessories. Next slide, please. Print out at least 5 copies of your resume. Print out 5 copies of your reference list. And if you weren't in the first webinar, I did talk about reference lists. They should not be included in the resume. They are a separate sheet. And so if you are going to be providing them with references, make sure that you do that. Sometimes it's a good idea at the end of an interview to say, would you like my reference list? This can indicate a couple of things. If they say yes, then you know they may have an interest. Don't be discouraged if they say, no, not at this time. It doesn't indicate that they don't have an interest, but it's a good kind of a test, if you want to say it that way. Take the 5 copies of your resume, 5 copies of your reference list, and place them in a portfolio. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a leather or zip-up portfolio, something that is solid in color, something that is a little bit substantial will do just fine. 2 pockets. Inside of those pockets, you might want to include your written notes that you've taken, maybe the position description or your list of what you think the duties are, and of course, a list of your questions. Include the company phone number and the name of the person that you're going to be interviewing with in case something occurs. You'll want to be able to have that information handy in the event of a delay so you can call in. Don't forget your breath mints. And this may sound a little odd, but a lot of people, when they're going to go through something like this, they get a little bit nervous. In the first place we start sweating is in our palms. So I suggest that you tuck in a tissue someplace so that before you shake the hand of the interviewer, you're feeling a little confident. Next slide, please. I think you should arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. You can arrive 30 minutes early if you want to assure that you're going to be there on time, but you don't want to languish in the reception area. It really makes people feel uncomfortable if you're out there for half an hour, 20 minutes or so. So once you've made sure that you're at the right place, then maybe you can go out and get a cup of coffee. Don't forget to go to the restroom if that's the case, or a cup of water outside of the area, and then come back and announce yourself about, I'm thinking, pop that breath mint and announce yourself about 5 minutes before your actual, I guess that's on the next slide, I'm sorry. Announce yourself to the receptionist about 5 minutes prior to your appointment. I'm going to make a note here too because I think it's really important, and I've seen this work magic many, many times. Ask or notice the person who is going to announce you, ask or notice their name. And then be sure to address them by that name and thank them by name for making the introduction to the interviewer. And there's a few reasons for that. The receptionist is more powerful than one might think. I worked with a company with a 78-year-old receptionist who just loved the part of her job where she was able to greet people that were coming in to interview. And she would report to every hiring manager how she was treated in the lobby. That they were rude, they didn't pay any attention, they didn't seem to be pleasant, they seemed to be really nervous. She gave them all the information that she could before the person being interviewed went into the interview. And you'd be surprised at what kind of an impact they're going to have on a prospective employer. Next slide, please. I want to also draw to your attention that even though you may be interviewing with casual companies and you may not feel that it's necessary, I'm going to spend a little time on this because I think many an interview has been, or the hiring process has been stopped because of a few of these points. Don't forget that when you walk into that interview, the first thing they see are not your skills and talents. The first thing that they see is you. And that first impression, we've all heard it so many times, you do not have a second chance to make a first impression. So you really want to assure yourself that you're dressing professionally. Next slide, please. So for women and men, here are some do's and don'ts. Please wash your hair. Make sure that it's freshly clean. And you know, it's surprising. If you had a pasta dinner with garlic the night before, you may not be aware of it. We become accustomed to our own fragrances, if you will, and they linger in the hair. So the morning of your interview, be sure that you wash your hair and it's fresh and clean, and it's trimmed. Men sometimes forget that, you know, a couple inches, even an inch on the hair can look a little bit unruly. So make sure that your hair is neat, clean, and trimmed, and styled attractively. Here's another one that might seem, in fact, a lot of these are going to say, I know that, just common sense. But I'm bringing them to your attention because a lot of people just forget to do these things at the last minute with their excitement. So bathe and shower, wear your deodorant. There's no other time you're going to need it more than this. Brush your teeth and brush them thoroughly. Use some mouthwash. And then make sure, of course, as I mentioned before, that your clothes are clean and pressed. And here's a controversial subject, but you never know about the people that are interviewing you. You don't really know a lot about their culture, even if you've done some research. And you probably, at this point, might want to consider covering tattoos. And if you have piercings, you might want to consider moving them. I had a young lady who was very well qualified and had graduated and with her master's, actually her MBA, and was interviewing with a financial services company. And she said, if they can't take me with my nose piercing, then I don't want to work there. And so she kept it in. She ended up falling in love with the company on her first interview, and when I heard back from the employer regarding moving on with additional interviews, they were going to decline because they said the woman that was interviewing her just couldn't get past the nose piercing. So once you get into the company and you're feeling more comfortable, you can, put that back in. But I think during the interview process, both of these things regarding our personal likes and dislikes should probably be a bit disguised. Next slide, please. So I want to really concentrate on a couple of other things about the colors. They do make a difference. Black is probably the most acceptable color. I think it really makes a statement. It doesn't overwhelm. It lets you be the person they're looking at as opposed to something that's very colorful. Next would probably be charcoal gray. It has the same effect. And navy blue be a good choice. It always shows sincerity, as does brown. But you have to be careful with those colors because you need to make sure that everything is going to be complement one another. So I would stay with solid colors because patterns can tend to distract. Next slide, please. I know I'm spending some time on this, but I think it's really worth it. In the classes that I conduct, I think there are more questions about this than any other. So men, you need to check out your shoes. I don't know if you're aware, but most women outside the professional arena, one of the first things they look at when they're checking out the attributes of a man, they look at their shoes, because if the shoes aren't well polished and they're all run down, it kind of indicates that that's the way the person takes care of themselves. The other thing that many women and men look at are the hands. So make sure that you've scrubbed under your nails. Make sure that they're particularly clean. You don't have to have them polished, but make sure that they are clean and presentable. And then don't wear any chains or any conspicuous jewelry. It does distract. And I have seen this happen so many times. Black suit, white socks. Never, never, never. It just doesn't work. Also, to bring to your attention that there are a couple of other taboos. No tennis shoes. I don't care how casual the place is. And a lot of men wear those puffy nylon jackets, and I love them. They keep you warm, but they don't make a good impression on the interviewer. So if you have a puffy jacket and it's cold out, remove it before you go into the interview. Next slide, please. So basically, the rules that we would use for men, because they have changed over the years. It used to be that I would say, wear a suit and a tie. I don't think that's so true any longer. I think men, when going into a professional company, do still need to wear that suit and tie. And I suggest that have a solid, long-colored, a long-sleeve colored shirt, solid color, long-sleeve shirt. It does work better, and you don't want to, with a short sleeve shirt, it doesn't put the whole look together. Make sure you pay attention to your shoes. They should be either a loafer or a dress shoe, and they should be polished and clean, as mentioned before. If you're going to a casual office, it's okay. You can wear a pair of slacks and a blazer or a sport coat. That's going to work, but make sure they're color coordinated. Again, a solid long sleeve shirt, and a tie here might be optional. You could wear a shirt unbuttoned and open, one or two buttons, because it makes a nice look. If you're going to an extremely casual office, and you know that everyone wears jeans, and everyone is, maybe they don't even wear shoes. Maybe they have a dog under their desk. I don't care how casual it is. You, as a professional, should dress professionally, at least in neat and clean chinos or slacks. No jeans ever. I don't care if everyone there has a pair of jeans on. You won't feel uncomfortable because this is an interview and should be treated as such. You can wear a solid colored striped long sleeve shirt You can not wear a tie. I will suggest that you don't wear a polo shirt. A striped, long striped or solid color striped shirt makes a better impression. Polo shirts, pullover type of shirts just don't work. One of my students had worked at IBM in the San Francisco office as a hiring manager, and he informed me that if someone had a polo shirt, he just kind of treated the interview as something someone wasn't serious about, and he never had them come back. A little extreme, I think, but you might pay attention to that. Next slide, please. Women. Gosh, there are so many questions that come around this, and I'll try to be brief about it. But, of course, your hair should be attractively groomed. Your nails, to polish or not. If you do have polish, that's fine, but choose something that's not bright. No bright reds, no bright pinks or oranges, certainly no colors. They should look very professional, neat and clean. So I think it's okay to have polish. I think it's fine to have polish, but just make sure that your nails are trimmed attractively and they don't distract from you. You want them to look at you, not your hands. Less makeup or more makeup? Also a question. If you're an individual that doesn't wear makeup at this present time, you might experiment with doing something which is a little bit of blush, a little bit of color on your lips, because it will make you look more like as if you pay attention to your attractiveness. I think it makes an impression. You don't want to overdo it, though. A lot of people feel that they should be, really made up. Oh, it's such a no-no, because especially under those fluorescent lights, it really tends to stand out. And you don't want them looking at your makeup. So try to be as fresh and natural as you are with a little bit of color, certainly a little bit mascara, but don't overdo it. And then check out your earrings and other jewelry. I suggest that you wear nothing that dangles. Certainly if you have a button type of earring or a small hoop, that's okay. But people aren't aware when they move their head that their earrings move with them or the opposite way. And it's extremely distracting, so stay away from them. You can wear shoes or boots. I think that's perfectly well. If you wear a suit, a skirt suit, you should have nylons that cover your legs, no bare legs. It doesn't make a good impression at all, even in the summertime. So you might want to consider wearing a pantsuit in that case. And you don't have to wear stockings if you're wearing a pantsuit, but make sure that you have paid attention to how the whole look comes together. Next slide, please. Again, before I leave, we're going to go to the next slide, but I do want to comment on the previous slide. You can wear pantsuits. You can wear skirt suits. It really doesn't matter, but make sure that they're not, the latest designer fashions. They should be rather conservative when going on an interview. Not dowdy, but just rather conservative. Again, for women in a professional office, solid color suit, skirt or pants, or a dress with a jacket, solid color long sleeve blouse, or shirt if you're, or short if your sleeves on your suit coat cover that. You need to wear a conservative pump or boots. No open-toed shoes, no strappy sandals in a professional arena. For a casual interview, try solid color slacks, a dress or a skirt, and you can complement them with a blazer or a jacket, again a solid skirt or blouse, solid shirt or blouse, and conservative shoe. They don't have to be a pump. It can be a conservative loafer or a flat. In an extremely casual arena, again, I suggest that you don't dress down. Wear solid color chinos, slacks, or a skirt. And here you can wear a solid color blouse or even a sweater if you choose. And again, conservative shoes, no tennis shoes. Next slide, please. Hope that wasn't too painful, but I think it's always worth remembering. The other thing that people frequently forget is body language. It says so much. That first handshake is going to tell the interviewer volumes about you. In our workshops, we take turns shaking one another's hands. A lot of people are really limp when they start out, but then people who think they shouldn't be limp all of a sudden take this death grip on your hand and shake it till it's breaking. So get something somewhere in between. You don't want to give a limp handshake. Or do you want to give a handshake that is so firm that it's uncomfortable to the other person? For those of you who have vision issues and may not be able to discern whether a hand is being extended to you, might I suggest that you consider stretching your hand out first for the handshake. That way they'll be coming to you. You won't have to go to them. I might also say that don't be discouraged if someone doesn't take your hand. Some people today, with all the swine flu that was going around earlier this year, have chosen not to have a handshake. And usually they're going to tell you that. But if they don't let that interview get started off on a bad start simply because they didn't shake your hand. Remember about all those nervous giveaways. I find it, for some reason, men have a habit of shaking their legs. They just shake, shake, shake away. Their feet may be on the floor, but those legs are just going a mile a minute. So make sure that you're paying attention to those nervous giveaways. A lot of times women play with their hair or touch their hair. They move it from their face, twirl it in their fingers. Some people click their pins, tap on their portfolio. Make sure that you pay attention to those things that will set you apart as being a really nervous person. The arm position. A lot of people ask, where do I put my arms? I suggest you don't put them on the arms of the chair, that you have them relaxed and going into, your lap position, and your legs. It's odd, but having studied body language, did you know that if you turn your leg, you cross your leg facing to the right or facing to the left, the direction in which it is pointing is the person that you're paying attention to, that you're most concentrated on. So I think rather than crossing the legs, unless it's something you really feel uncomfortable not doing, if you are going to cross your legs, make sure your knee is pointed toward the person who's going to be interviewing you. So the best leg position is probably with your feet comfortably placed on the floor, with your legs together, or perhaps slanted to the side. But practice that. See how your leg position feels best. Everything that you do in an interview, and even if you think about it, when you're talking with someone, all those hidden body language messages are read, and they are paid attention to, even if the person isn't aware that they're doing. So your hand position, it says something when you're able to put your hands in your lap and to put your palms up, one hand being held in the other with your palms up. That gives a hidden message that you're open, and I like that. But if you're uncomfortable with it, then place your palms on top of one another with your hands on top of one another with the palms placed facing down. You want to sit back in your chair. You want to make sure that you're comfortable in the chair, and then just let your body, the top of your body, slant a little bit forward, because it indicates, again, with body language, that you're paying attention. If you're unable to see, then practice looking at the voice, because even if you aren't able to make eye contact with someone, you want them to think that you're making eye contact with them. So pick a place on their face that you can see, like in between the nose. Concentrate on that, and then they're not going to tell the difference. And then look at the voice. Facial expressions. If you have a tendency to wrinkle your nose, if you have a tendency to shake your head, and so on and so forth, you want to be yourself, but you need to be aware. So I have some suggestions for you. Practice, practice, practice. Next slide, please. Slides, the styles and the questions will vary greatly when you're in an interview. We're going to talk about these a little bit later, but you're not going to see the same person. You're not going to see the same style. You're not going to hear the same question time after time. So they vary. And some of these people you're going to interview with have never interviewed anyone before. They may not have any of the what you expect. They're probably just as nervous as you are. Some people are very practiced at what they do, and they really have a list of questions that are already prepared, and they're going to go by that list. The process also varies. Sometimes you can have a one-on-one, or sometimes there might be multiple people in the room. You might have several people that form a panel because it is an expeditious way for people to get information and to concur with their assessment after the interview. Or sometimes you might have several, or one or two or three interviews back to back. So that's why you should be prepared with those 5 resumes, even though you're thinking you might meet one person. Indeed, that one person may be so impressed with you, you might hear, you know, the hiring manager happens to be on site and he's going to be traveling for 2 more weeks. I'd like to take an advantage, if you're available, of him being here by having you meet with him now. So you want to be prepared for that. You're going to be asked probably 2 kinds of questions. They're going to be commonly asked questions, the ones that can be answered very quickly, and then you're going to receive perhaps a few behavioral questions, and we're going to discuss that in a couple of minutes. I do want to say one thing, regardless of the questions that you were asked, listen to the questions and answer only the question. It takes some practice, but you don't want to be a rambler. When possible, when you're answering those questions, include a benefit, something that you've done that will let the employer see how that you can benefit them. Next slide, please. So the interviewer is going to be prepared to ask questions. That's another part that many people always forget. So at the end, generally speaking, you're going to be asked, do you have any questions? If they do not, it's a good time for you to ask, may I ask you a couple of questions? It really shows that you're interested in the job, and you should be prepared for it. Always ask for a business card before you leave the interview. You'll want to use that to write your thank you note, and you want to keep it on hand so that you can follow up. And I suggest, and I know I'm putting cart before the horse here, but these are general rules for interviewing, write a thank you note and send it immediately. I want to take a minute here because there are several ways you can do that. I think one of the nicest things you can do is write a handwritten note if you're able to do that. If you are going to do that, you can address the envelope and put a stamp on it, keep the note inside when you go on the interview, and after you've concluded the interview, you can write the note very quickly and pop it in the mail on the way home. If you are going to choose to use an email, you can also do that. It's okay. But if you write a personal thank you note in your own writing, it really does tend to make an impression. Getting something in the mail is so different than getting something with an email. Remember, you should also time this with the day of your interview. If you're interviewing on a Friday, you think that they're making a decision right away, you might want to consider an email because they're not going to have time to receive that letter from you, or may not. Next slide, please. Commonly asked questions. I'm not going to go into this very deeply because we could spend all day on it. In your handout, you are going to receive a list of commonly asked questions. Of course, there are going to be others, but these are fairly commonly asked questions. And with each of the questions, I have included a suggested response by you. These questions are usually open-ended questions. They're going to require you to talk. You're not just going to be able to say yes or no. So answer completely without too much detail unless you're asked to expand. When appropriate, include a benefit, as I said before, with your answer. Be honest. Be concise. The biggest mistake people make in interviews is rambling. Oh, it's so frustrating to a person that's interviewing. And it's a tendency for all of us to want to feel understood. So particularly if we see a pregnant pause coming in there, we feel the need to fill up that pause with additional information. And sometimes that's even a ploy by a recruiter to see how much you're going to reveal about yourself. But when you start rambling and you get off subject, you're digging a hole and you're going down a path you can't retrieve. So do your best to not ramble. And then, as I said, I've included a list of those kinds of questions. Next slide, please. Behavioral questions are a little bit different. You can't anticipate them. There are the questions like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of. oh, you can't know what's going to be asked of you. So it's impossible to practice your answers. So when possible, when you do receive those questions, when possible, use examples that relate and focus on the solution, and if at all possible, you'll be lucky if they relate to their specific company and the specific issues that they have. But if not, and you're talking about another type of job entirely, it's still looking at your behavior. How do you handle those kinds of situations? So don't just explain what you did, also include the solution. Again, we have this tendency to ramble because we don't know what the questions are, and our tongues can become pretty tied up, just like mine did. The list of these questions, next slide please, is included in your packet. Terry, I think I may be on a separate set of slides because I don't see the slide is probably coming up later, so I may have messed up here. But before I go into the interview follow-up, there is a slide about role-playing. And I especially because of the behavioral questions, I encourage every single one of you, whether you think you're the best person, an interviewer of all times, I encourage you to do some role-playing. It's fun. You'll enjoy it. If you take your resume, place it between you and another person. It can be a family friend. It can be a family member or just someone you recruited with some pop of beer and some popcorn, and ask them to have a bit of fun with you. So face one another, and in facing one another, let the other person be the interviewer. Have them ask you all the questions. You could answer them, and do not comment about your answers at this point. Then I'd like you to change roles. You become the interviewer. This is also fun. Check out their body language. Don't tell them beforehand you're going to do so, but check out their body language. See what it's like to interview someone else. Ask them the questions, let them answer, and again, do not respond. The third time, take the part of the person who's being interviewed, have the interviewer ask you the questions, and this time, after each question, comment. Could you have answered it more directly? Did you ramble? Look at all those things, because interviewing is an art. It's something that you learn, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be with it, and you won't be caught with your mouth hanging open and nothing coming out. This is particularly true of behavioral questions. The ones that are included in the list are not ones that you're going to commonly see. They are going to be just at the whim of the person who's interviewing you. So even though you may not come up with the exact questions or any of them that are on the sheet, the whole ebb and flow of practicing this kind of interview can really help you think on your feet. It will be extremely helpful. I encourage all of you to do it not just once, but several times. Practice, practice, practice. The interview follow-up is essential. You know what, I talked a little bit about being email or by phone, and you don't want to badger, though. As I mentioned, I have one person, that same person who followed up on getting an interview, made a habit of following up after the interview. She waited about a week. If she hadn't heard anything, she picked up the phone. She called the individual, even if it was on a voice message, and left a message that continued to have extreme interest in the position, hoping that they're at a point where they're wanting to make a decision to bring an individual in, again, for another interview, wanting to be one of them. And you can do that, I think, best by phone, but if essential, you can do that by email. But be sure to indicate your intense interest in the job, but don't badger. Don't call every day. Don't make them feel that you're calling to have them make a decision before they're ready. It will only serve to irritate. And so you can do that follow-up and let them know you're still interested by showing your enthusiasm. Next slide, please. I'm hoping that you'll all put these very brief hints into place and that indeed you're going to find a job. That's what I wish for all of you. And if there's any way I can help you with any of your issues, I'm hoping that you'll contact me. But there are a few things. Let's just say you get that new job. You have to keep the job. it's great to get a job, but that you have to keep it. So in the handout, there's a lot more information about this. But I think some of the cardinal rules are, when you first start a job, don't try to make yourself the center of attention right away. Sit back and observe. Watch what's going on around you so that you'll know, you'll get the lay of the land. So you need to be pleasant and positive during that period of time. And don't change things too quickly. Even if you see that some kind of a process could be done a lot more efficiently and you're the person to show them how to do that, wait a bit. See a little bit more about how things are handled, and then approach someone that is appropriate with the right kind of information. You don't want to be seen as a person coming into the department like a bull and trying to change everything the way you want it done. And you need to demonstrate your work ethic. This is a time when you, sorry to say it, but come in a few minutes early, stay a few minutes late. It's very important that you establish yourself as someone who's going to be contributing to the company. Another pointer is never engage in office gossip. I know all of you know that, but you know when you start a new job and people are talking about someone else's salary or how someone else is, holding their own in the job, it can be a little enticing. You might want to, engage in some of that, or at least listen, but stay away from it because it can be a death knell. And be aware, but don't attempt to show your strong will, so on and so forth. You don't want to engage too much with upper management at this point. You want to see what the lay of the land is like, because you don't want to be seen as someone that's trying to, excuse the expression, but brown-nose upper management at this point. It also can really cut your job short. And then you need to keep your direct manager informed of what's going on. That's not your complaints. That's your progress. That's anything that's, perhaps come into a project, for instance, that's causing a snag, or that a little mistake was made, and maybe it's going to affect that manager, because you don't want to blindside him. You don't want him to hear about something that was said about a problem and him or her not have the answers. And then, of course, you need to settle issues directly. If you're having an issue with an employee, a peer, just make an effort to speak with them directly before you elevate it. Unless it's not working out at all, don't elevate it. Managers really appreciate someone who can do this. They don't like to hear about all the minutiae of the issues that are going on in the office. So unless it's something that's of extreme importance and hasn't been settled by you and another individual, I would suggest that you don't take that to your manager. And resist becoming friends with your manager too soon. A lot of managers are very sincere in their reaching out to be friends with you. But it also, until you really know, again, the lay of the land, this is something that you have to just kind of test the waters with, because your peers may not enjoy you becoming quick friends with the manager. It may seem to look like you're trying to win favor. And also sometimes a manager, if they're too friendly with you, it makes it more difficult for them to do their job, more difficult for them to be a manager. So take it slow in that area. And then focus on doing assigned job. Don't think that, oh, this job is, I hate this job, I joined the company to get my foot in the door. What I really should be doing is X, Y, Z. If you don't do the job you're hired to do, trust me, you're not going to get that promotion. Again, I say that if you have any questions, my email is going to be there for you to call me. And as you're preparing for your search, I'm suggesting a couple of things. Make a list of your contacts, the people that you know, even if you don't think that they have connections. Make a list of contacts. Think about them. Make a list of the companies where you'd most like to work. Put this down on paper. Just don't think about it. And consider your skills and your goals, and think how you might change some of those skills and goals into a new direction. I hope I'm running all right on time here, because I want to give you an example of something that happened to me just today. One of the young men that's going to be coming into this next workshop that I'm starting is very discouraged. He has very low vision, and he's just he's beside himself because he doesn't think he's going to be able to find a job. So we started talking a little bit about what he did, and one of the things he said as a hobby is that he's a hang glider. I always say hand glider, but it's a hang glider. He loves it. He has wanted to be a pilot since he was a young child, and so one of the ways he could still fly was to learn how to hang glide. And he adapted his hang glider to accommodate his low vision. And he said he goes to the beach and to the hills of San Francisco almost every weekend. And people stay out of his way because of his hang glider being equipped with certain equipment. And that he's probably the blindest pilot that ever lived. And lo and behold, when we started talking, we thought, how could that change into a job? And we came up with 5 or 6 different ways that he could use that skill and that particular hobby that he had to turn it into a job. We thought about getting him some publicity in a newspaper or a publication talking about his specific talent of being a blind hang glider. And then we discovered that he could go to companies that manufacture hang gliders. He could go to publications that are addressed specifically to the hang glider reader. Or maybe he could work for the company directly and in their customer service department and work with people that had questions about hang gliders or the product. Use that kind of imagination. Be creative when you're looking at things that can happen for you, because I can tell you right now, it's worth it. You have an opportunity to create something for yourself that's specifically for you. It is, I think, so very important to do what fits you instead of just having a job. Consider using your, next slide please, you might want to consider using your disability to your advantage. I know of many people that actually work with companies, organizations, and agencies that serve the low vision. It's a wonderful place to find employment. And you'll be with people that really do understand what you're going through. So don't forget to kind of use that to your advantage if it's at all possible. Talk with others who have met the challenge. Find a mentor. Ask them to mentor you. Most people are just so eager to talk about themselves and talk about how they overcame things. It's amazing when you tell someone you admire them and you want to emulate what they're doing. They're going to give you all kinds of information. So pick someone that you particularly admire that perhaps has met with the same or similar kind of challenge and ask them how they found their job. What did they do? What were some of the helps that they asked for along the way? Another great way of finding a job is to volunteer. We forget so frequently that the work that you're experiencing when you are a volunteer can many times qualify you to either create or enhance a position that they're not even aware of. Make yourself valuable in that volunteer position, and it's amazing how many times that can turn into an actual position. And while I'm saying that, it's a great thing to put on your resume that you've done volunteer work. So don't forget to use that as one of your resources. I think I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Kate. That was just really a lot of great information for job searching. We have one question from Dave, who's in New Zealand, actually. And he says, what is a good way, when you have to change jobs due to vision loss, what is a good system to identify a new career for oneself?
Oh, some of what I just talked about in the last slide is probably something that person wants to look at. I can't even tell you. It takes a little bit of creativity. You can't just, think I've done this before. I need to adapt that specific job to another opportunity. I think that just write down a list of your skills, write down a list of your talents, write down a list of your experience. It takes a little bit of work. But then look at those and try to see what are the possibilities here. Mentioning the young man with the hang glider, once I told him all of those ideas, he said, well, what I really want to do is I have an invention. And he talked about that a little bit. Something that I thought was just absolutely amazing. He's never done anything with it, but we came up with several ideas as to the jobs where he might be able to promote that patent that he has. So it does take some creativity, but you do, if possible, need to look at your innate skills, your innate talents, and find out where they're most applicable.
Thank you for that. And we have a question from someone who has already been in a job, but she would like to know, she says her eyesight is failing now, and some days she's more functional than others, and she wonders when to communicate to her current employer and how much should she say about her failing eyesight.
That's a pressing question, and I can understand why it's being asked. We did address this in the webinar number 1, or part 1. But I think if you're doing a job and you're finding it more difficult to perform to the optimal level, and other people seem to be passing you up because you have vision loss, it's very important to address that right away. And one of the things that I might suggest is prior to taking that to the employer as an issue, you might want to do some research and find out what kind of equipment could help you do the job better. Maybe it's some adaptive technology like a program like Zoom Text that enlarges print. Or maybe it's something as simple as a CCTV that will allow you to have a monitor where you can see and read documents without transcribing them into a computer. And there are so many pieces of equipment that can assist people in keeping the job that they have. One of the people that works with my company, one of our owners actually, is all he does is that he works with companies when people are having difficulties, and even with proprietary software can do some scripting so that the person can, with adaptive technology, can be part of that. So there are a lot of solutions. I really encourage you to do your research before you present the issue to your employer. Find out what's available and find out what help can be given to you, because employers are much more, they're apt to assist you and be more encouraged about, enthusiastic even about assisting you if you present them with not only the issues, but with some solutions.
Very good. And coming from a Department of Rehabilitation, and you mentioned someone in that department who helps people, would you suggest people contact their state Department of Vision Rehabilitation?
And you know, I talked to a lot of people around the country, and departments of rehabilitation seem to have, they're not all the same. They all have the same mission, but perhaps not all of them don't carry the same mission out, or carry the mission out in the same way, I should say. But absolutely, I mean, the department, for me, the Department of Rehabilitation, just was amazing what they were able to give to me as far as assessment, paying for the equipment, paying for the training, and shall forever be thankful to and grateful to them for their assistance. If you're not getting that, I've learned also that if the counselor you're working with is not giving you the help that you need and you really feel that you're presenting it correctly, you can also go to a supervisor in the department and of that department and express your concerns, and they may assign you another counselor who will work with you better, or someone, or they may end up working with you, because it is their mission to supply you with the tools that you need to enable you to have work and or to keep work. So it is one of the first places I would go.
Thank you. One person also said they'd love to hear stories about actual people and who are thriving in with vision loss in a career. And I know your story is one of those stories, and I think you also have some stories in your handouts. Can you talk to that?
I do. I have stories in the handout, and how much time do I have, Chris?
Well, I would say we have 10 more minutes.
Okay.
We're a little over, but
okay. I will go ahead with some of the. I'm going to tell you some of the stories that are in the handout, because I'm really amazed. I'm absolutely amazed with what people have done. People have tweaked their jobs. They found new jobs, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those people, and hopefully this will encourage, this will inspire you, maybe motivate you. I just want to give you hope that there are jobs for everyone out there. There really are. It may change, but there are going to be some jobs. So actually right now we're in the process, the company that I work with is in the process of establishing a mentorship program. So it's given me an opportunity for all the graduates of our workshops. So it's given me an opportunity to interface with many professionals and individuals who are presently working to establish them as mentors for other people coming out of the workshops. And so I've been able to question a lot of people, and what I've found out is actually, I realized how little I had to overcome when I talk to some of these other people. Some of these people are actually my students, as is this one. His name is Victor, and he was a teacher in secondary education. He lost his vision to the point that he actually has to use a guide dog. He has very little vision left. And he's a married person. He has children, so his responsibilities were great. And he needed to find a job. And he felt that it was just very difficult for him to continue in his profession with the guide dog and the children and so on and so forth, or the youth, I should say. He'd always wanted to be in sales. And he thought this was his opportunity during a summer to see what he could do about that. And I think this is amazing. He decided, I'm a blind person, so who could appreciate me in the role of sales? It has to be a company that deals with people who have issues with low vision or blindness. He had kind of a scientific background as well, so he researched companies and in the field of ophthalmic pharmaceuticals. And then he marketed himself into those companies, not with a job opening, just with his own talents, his own cover letter. And he sold himself on the fact that, you know, your primary customer is the ophthalmologist. So I think in kind of a nice way, put your money where your mouth is and hire people that have these issues. And it will say something about the way you do business and what you believe in. And now he's been hired. They are waiting for a territory to open up where he'll be in a metropolitan area and can use public transportation because he's not able to drive. But the company is so excited about having him join them, and he's going to their sales meetings and whatnot right now. And I consider that to be a lot of creativity. He took a dream and found out, how can I apply that? And then he went ahead and did it. Now, I'm not saying it happened right away, because a lot of cover letter and resumes were never returned, and they never answered his phone calls. But he made that connection. It was worth the work. James is also a person that was in my class. He was a field sales representative in a high-tech company. When he could no longer drive, he marketed himself to his own company, and he thought he was going to make a little bit less money, and he's making almost more money, because he marketed himself as a sales lead generator. He works in the office. He's not driving. He makes a lot of phone calls, and I'm sure that sometimes this is really difficult because they're cold calls, and it wasn't something that he was accustomed to. But he's been able to really handle this well, and he's still an integral member of the sales team, and he still attends all of their meetings. He goes to all of their conventions, and most importantly, they really hold him in high esteem because he is the person who brings in all those leads for new business. And now he is making commissions on all the sales that generate, all the leads that generate a sale. Marvelina, also a graduate of my class. I alluded to Marvelina in the first webinar that we had. It was kind of spontaneous on my part, but she's such a success story. Marvelina is totally blind. Previous to that, she was a customer service representative. And she came from, she uses a guide dog. So she really has no vision. And Marvelina lived in Peru as a child, so her native language was Spanish. When she lost her position, but knew she still had those skill sets with customer service, she enrolled in a program at San Francisco State University, a translator course, and she became a certified translator. So now she works from her home. She's a translator, global translator, talks to individuals who speak Spanish and translates to the companies that are here in the United States. And the company that she works for, they handle, translation company, they handle law, medical, and insurance companies. And she's able to work when she wants to, and she's tripled her salary. As I mentioned, a lot of people, I want you to consider, if you really do have low vision or you're concerned about working in the mainstream, which I never think you should forget if you want to do it, but you might want to capitalize on your disability as such as a person as Chris. Chris has been blind since birth. He's not a member of my workshops. He's not a graduate. He is a consultant to me. I go to him frequently. He's an amazing, amazing man. He's been blind since birth, and he really had to push hard with the Department of Rehabilitation to pay for his MBA, but he convinced them that he was worth the investment, so he received his MBA. He also marketed himself for a government job, and he moved to Washington, D.C. from the state of Washington and worked in a department in Washington, D.C. for quite a number of years. And while he was there, he learned about technology, something that he had never really worked with before because he was blind. And in order to use it, he became familiar with adaptive technology. And then through the personal connections that he made in his job in Washington, D.C., he met someone who was at Oracle back here in Southern California, and they hired him as a project manager. He could have been the only blind person in the whole company, but he certainly was the only blind person in his department. And he used adaptive technology as a project manager to move projects through Oracle, very prestigious company in our area. He then 3 years ago began his own company, and he develops unique products for the blind and visually impaired. And he also serves on the boards of many organizations that do serve the blind and visually impaired. And I think one of the real things that I'm proud about him is that he was a guest of the Obama administration just yesterday at the celebration of the 20th anniversary for the ADA. So I'm really he's just someone that I'd like to grow up and be just like him. One more, Bruce, also a graduate of one of our workshops, has been low vision since he was young. His ambition has always been to serve people in the blind community. And he recently graduated, in fact, just in May, graduated from Cal State Berkeley, not Cal State, Cal Berkeley. And so he has some good education behind him, and he also has a lot of drive. So he sent his resumes to various organizations around the company without, mark this, without looking for job openings. He presented himself as a person that could be of benefit to their organization. And I'm very pleased to say that he will be moving back to Virginia in the month of, I think it's September, and he's going to be working with NIB, National Institute for the Blind, Industries for the Blind. He's going to be doing a 2-year fellowship with them, and after the fellowship is over, as part of his contract with him, he'll be working with a major Fortune 500 company to serve as a role model to other individuals for that company who may wish to work. Do I have any more time, or should I stop?
I think that's probably all the time we have. We've gone a half hour over, but it's been fascinating. And Kate, those are wonderful stories. No, it's been great. And I wanted to tell everybody that you are willing to answer questions one-on-one and invite people to contact you with their specific questions at the email address that's on the screen right now. I also want to let everybody know that Part 1, which was a month ago, will be posted on our website, and you will be able to just click on it and listen and watch at the same time. And that Kate's handouts will also be posted on the website, available for download. They are a wealth of information and more stories. So for the Part 1 and the Part 2, they will both be on the website within probably 2 or 3 weeks. There's also a future webinar registration page, and you can go there and see what's coming up. We do have probably end of September a webinar on cardiology and the vascular implications of PXE. And if you have any questions, thank you, Kate. If anyone has any other questions, you can email info@pxe.org if they have to do with PXE. or you could call the office, 202-362-9599. We're in Washington, D.C. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and for your attention, and especially Kate. Thank you for your time preparing all this and sharing your really positive attitude and all your knowledge with all these folks.
Thank you.